The rain started before dawn, the kind that soaked through jackets and settled into bones. Mark didn't notice at first. He was already on the ladder, hands numb, hammer tapping against loose shingles as gray clouds pressed low over the quiet Ontario street. Below him, his 8-year-old son Liam sat on the porch steps, knees pulled to his chest, pretending to read while secretly watching every move his father made. Mark had taken this job because he had no choice. Rent was overdue, the fridge was almost empty, and the woman who owned this house had sounded desperate on the phone. "My roof is leaking badly," she'd said. "I can't afford a big repair." Mark understood that voice. He lived in it every day. Mark was a single dad not by plan, but by loss. 2 winters ago, a highway accident took his wife on her way home from a night shift. Since then, life had shrunk into survival. He fixed roofs, patched fences, shoveled snow, anything paid in cash. Some weeks he chose between bus fare and groceries. Still, every morning he packed Liam's lunch with quiet care, cutting apples into neat slices, smiling like things were normal. He never wanted his son to feel the weight he carried. The house belonged to Eleanor Whitmore, though Mark didn't know her name then. To him, she was just an older woman with silver hair pulled into a loose bun, wrapped in a wool cardigan despite the warmth inside. She met him at the door with tired eyes and a grateful nod. "I'm sorry it's such a mess," she said softly. "I've been putting this off." Mark waved it away. He'd seen worse, much worse. As he worked, the rain worsened. Water dripped through cracked shingles, soaking the plywood beneath. Mark realized quickly this wasn't a simple patch job. Half the roof needed replacement. He swallowed hard. He could have walked away, told her it was too big. But he thought of Liam's shoes with holes in the soles, of the landlord's last warning. He climbed down and explained the damage honestly, already preparing himself for her to say no. Eleanor listened quietly. When he finished, she sighed. "Do what you can," she said. "I trust you." No negotiation, no haggling, just trust. It surprised him. He worked for hours, long past when his body begged him to stop. Liam eventually fell asleep on the porch, curled against Mark's jacket. When Mark saw him shiver, something inside broke. He wanted to give his son more than this. More than waiting on cold steps while his father fixed someone else's problems. As evening fell, Mark realized he'd used almost all his materials. The job still wasn't perfect, but the leaks were sealed. He packed his tools quietly, heart heavy. He knocked on the door to explain that he couldn't finish everything without more supplies, that he wouldn't charge extra, that he was sorry. Eleanor invited him inside. She handed Liam a mug of hot chocolate and smiled in a way that made Mark uncomfortable, like she saw straight through him. Then she sat at the table and asked gently, "Why didn't you tell me you were undercharging?" Mark froze. I quoted what I thought was fair." She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a printed estimate from a roofing company. Triple what Mark had asked. His face flushed with shame. "I didn't want to take advantage," he said quietly. "People are struggling." Eleanor nodded. "So are you." She stood and walked to a bookshelf, pulling down a framed newspaper article. Mark glanced at it, then did a double take. The headline spoke of Canada's wealthiest business leaders. Her name was there. Eleanor Whitmore, founder of a national construction supply empire. Net worth in the hundreds of millions. Mark's breath caught. He stood abruptly. "I didn't know," he said, backing away. "I can redo the invoice. I swear." Eleanor raised a hand. "Sit down." Her voice was firm, not angry. "You fixed my roof in the rain while your child waited in the cold. You told me the truth when you could have lied. Do you know how rare that is?" Tears burned Mark's eyes before he could stop them. He looked at Liam, happily sipping cocoa, unaware of the storm inside his father. Eleanor slid a check across the table. The amount made Mark's hands shake. It was more than he'd earned in months. "This is for the work," she said. "And this," she added, handing him another envelope, "is an offer." Inside was a job contract. Full-time, benefits, training, a steady salary. "I need people like you," she said. "People who don't cut corners when no one is watching." Mark tried to speak but couldn't. He nodded, once, then again, as tears fell freely. He hadn't cried since the day he buried his wife. Eleanor reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Not pity, respect. Weeks later, Mark drove past that same street in a company truck, Liam beside him, chattering about school. The future no longer felt like a cliff edge. It felt like a road. And somewhere in Ontario, a roof stood strong against the rain, because a broke single dad chose honesty over ease, and kindness found its way back to him when he least expected it.